What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves, physically, emotionally, and spiritually?
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them, visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies? Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS. Have you ever wondered, can you communicate directly with spirit guides, teachers, or non-physical consciousness, or even our higher selves? What would they tell us? My name is Kevin Moore, and since 2015, I started to practice a form of communication which is termed channeling. I have been interviewing experts on my talk show to find out, does life continue after we die? And can we communicate with those that have crossed over? With each expert I spoke to, they all had different ideas. Is there knowledge from the past which could be shared with the present moment? So I thought, why not just speak to the non-physical world directly through channelers around the world? And that's what I set out to do. They Call Us Channelers will take the viewers on a journey into the phenomena known as channeling. And my main goal with this docuseries is to bring a new understanding and awareness to channeling by looking within ourselves and asking, is it truly possible that we can all use this innate ability?
All right, so Benny Ferguson. I'm here in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. I've been here since 1993. I went to college here, majored in biology, minored in chemistry. Right before I graduated college, I started volunteering with a nonprofit organization that worked with at-risk youth. So 97, if you fast forward to early 2000s, say 2001, 2002, I went from being a volunteer there to the director of operations, working directly with the executive director. I had about, I'm gonna say 50 something employees over 3 counties. We worked with about 400 youth a year that had been suspended from school, from middle school. And I learned a lot in that. Without any prior managerial training or leadership training, it was just kind of me doing what I do, you know. And but I always knew I wanted to be in business for myself. Back in high school, I knew I wanted to be in business for myself. My dad, all of my uncles, they knew how they were carpenters, they were mechanics, all of those things, but they never worked for themselves. They were kind of like maybe like independent contractors. So that kind of, I guess that kind of was in me. So, yeah, that's kind of where I am now. My wife and I, we have a daycare. We've had a daycare for about 20 years that we run out of our home. And we've kind of been self-employed. And I've been working with trying to do my thing at the same time. And in that struggle, having that inner conflict of knowing who and what I could be, but not being able to do it, is kind of what's really sparked and kind of thrust me into what I'm doing now. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so much to your work, and we have got so much to talk about as well. So I almost want to go to 2006. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Now, your background was very religious in a sense, yeah?
Yeah. My family, me, we grew up in Christianity. The Baptist, what you would say. And even with that, Kevin, when I remember being probably elementary school and not feeling right, not feeling like concepts and things that they didn't sit well with me. But I wasn't able to ask the questions, and if I did ask the question, I kind of got, you don't know enough, you're a child, that type of thing. But I had things that didn't sit right with me even back then. As I look back then and kind of move forward, I can see where kind of like I had a feeling or knew but didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah, and if we just sort of sum up right now what it is you do, I mean, could you sum that up in a sort of, a couple of sentences? Would you find that difficult to do, or?
You know what I do, Kevin, and what I would say that I do is I help people move into a higher potential to where they can see and create from a higher potential place, because that's kind of what I have been striving to do my entire life. And just from where I am now, I can really see into the challenges that we have as individuals, which are hugely rooted in self-value and self-worth. A lot of times and there's a question that I ask people: who would you be without the fear? Who would you be without the fear? Just that one question. Just take that home and sit with it. What could you have already done if the fear wasn't there? And it really is that simple. Then it moves from there to, okay, how do I get past it? How do I get beyond it? How do I let go of it?
And when you asked yourself that question, what was the answer?
Well, I want to say a lot more fearless, but that's kind of using it. More aggressive, more direct. And those two things would take you a long way if you're just able to do that without feeling like you're hurting someone else in the process, which is something that I have learned as I try to identify my sourceness, our sourceness behind the challenges, behind the ideas of the mind that we've been programmed to by, just humanity itself. A lot of things that we think are negative or wrong as a human, they're not when you look at it from source's standpoint, from source's viewpoint. If we be the biggest and the best version of ourselves in the brightest light, from the highest frequency and the highest tone, you're not going to hurt people in being that person. And you create that much faster because you are the strongest version of yourself.
That is so true. I mean, I think holding people accountable is different to going out and hurting people, as you say.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
If it's
Oh, yeah.
done from the right space as well. We can all fall down on that ladder sometimes, though, can't we? Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and
Mm-hmm.
none of us
And
are
it's a
perfect.
practice.
It is.
Yeah, it's a practice. It's a practice of building the consistency of staying in a high frequency. It's a practice. But the more you play with it and the more you practice it, you can see how your thinking is different and how you're able to stay centered when things that used to bother you or used to get you off center, when they come into your experience, you're a different person because you've been practicing with the vibration and the frequency. And that's one of the main things that Abraham speaks a lot about, mainly about through me versus, they've been speaking a long time. And they started off with the law of attraction. And I asked them, about the difference. And they said with the law of attraction, they got people's attention. Because people want to manifest the wealth. They want to manifest the cars, the houses, the relationship. So they got people's attention from that perspective. But through me, we're talking about connecting with source first. Through me, they're talking about your frequency and your tone first, not for any particular manifestation, but just to connect with source and realize who and what you really are. And when you do that, manifestations are a byproduct.
Right. It just happens because you're living your truth.
Right.
No matter what that is. And as long as you say, as long as you're not knowingly hurting someone in that process as well.
But in the higher frequencies and tones, that's not a part of the makeup. That's not a part of it. Hurting someone else doesn't come through you if you're in a higher frequency and higher tone. That's why it's important to practice cultivating it, because your body will adjust. Your body will adjust as you practice it, and you'll find yourself able to walk around in a different feeling place.
Yeah, and nothing that you've done has been to waste. Everything's led you to this moment. Yeah. And when you were ready, so you appear in a sense, as in coming onto this show as well. I'm so glad to have you on. Just know that, because I really do respect your work, and I think you come from this from a whole different perspective, and a perspective as well, which was part of your background makeup as well, being in the business world, in loving business in a sense, and now combining the business with the conscious side as well. So let's go to 2006. What happened to you in 2006 that Benny went through this shift, basically?
In 2006, I was working with a financial services organization, fully licensed, sell insurance. I could do investments, mutual funds, and it had a network marketing component to it. The gentleman that trained me, that I'm still connected with, if you look at the result of the money that you can make, right? He was making, say, $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month then. Now he's pushing 10, 11, 12, 13. He's still doing it. The guy that trained him was making over $100,000 a month. And this is insurance, investments, been doing it a long time, plus the network marketing piece. So I was involved in that for a number of years, long enough, because I'm a student, right? I've always been a student. I look to the foundation of things to understand what makes it work. And so I get in and I learn everything that I need to know. So after you've been around people long enough, you realize that you know everything that they know for the most part, right? I could go out and make the sales. I just wasn't able to go make the sales, right? I knew everything that I needed to know. I've been around these people. I've sat with them. I've eaten dinner with them. So I'm like, what's the difference between me and them? The only difference between me and them is how we thought. Now I know that now, but at that time I didn't know it. And in 2006, I can remember coming home from Greensboro, which is about 30 minutes from where I live. Coming home, asking myself that question. And I was crying. And I was so upset. And I remember banging on the steering wheel saying, what's the matter with me? I don't understand what's the matter with me that I can't make the calls, get on the phone. If somebody could do it for me, I could go on the calls and make the sale, but I couldn't get on the phone. And it was fear, but I didn't know it then. And I think a couple of weeks later, I had I'm gonna say a nightmare, which is like a fear-based dream, similar to ones that I had been having since elementary school. And I woke up, and right before I woke up, I told myself that I was tired of being afraid. And Kevin, when I woke up, I was in a full-blown anger rage, and I can right now I can kind of still feel the fire coming off of me. And I stood up on my side of the bed. My wife came around. She was asking me what was wrong, asking me to calm down. And I had a spontaneous out-of-body experience. My vision was 300. It felt like a long time. Of course, it was maybe a couple of seconds. But my vision was 360 degrees. I could see my body, and I could see my wife in front of my body begging for me to calm down, right? And I was so angry that in that position, I was trying to keep my body from getting to my wife, just out of anger. And so then I was back in my body, and I turned and I kind of hit the bookshelf. And so after that, that's when I started, okay, what happened? And then from there, that's kind of where it really sped up. The religion I was participating in, it didn't prepare me for that. So I went around the world. I went to all the spiritual traditions, the religions of the world, the major ones, quantum physics. I had the background in chemistry and biology and all that. So I put all of that stuff came together from me looking for what happened to me and why. And also with the question of what control and power do I have in and over my life. And when I went out looking through this material, I wasn't looking for what was wrong with them, right? I wasn't even looking for what was right with them. I was looking for a description of what happened to me. And so in doing that, I was able to see the parallels in all of them. And that's kind of what propelled me forward. And in 2013, like I said, 2013 is when I first realized that the channeling was coming through, because I was writing, and I knew I wasn't doing the writing because there was words being used that I didn't know what they meant. So after the channeling, after I would finish typing, I have to go back and look up the words and see what they meant. Like, oh man, that's in the perfect place. That's exactly the right word. And then, Kevin, I realized also, because I was looking into an author, and I can't remember if I read this or I heard someone talking about him as an older gentleman. And they were saying that he went into a room to write, and he would spend 2 hours in that room, doors closed. Sometimes he would write. Sometimes the writing would come to him and he would write for pages and pages, and sometimes nothing would come. I said, man, that sounds a lot like channeling. Sounds like it was coming through him. And then I also realized that when I was in college and I would have a paper and I would have everything ready, but I couldn't write it. And almost every time, 11, 12, 1 o'clock at night, the paper would come through me, and it would all come through me at one time. So even, now looking back, it was happening then. And you want to think that, okay, it's about the spiritual journey and spiritual stuff. No, that they were helping me with my research paper back then, but I didn't know it. Even the nightmares that I used to think were nightmares when I was in elementary school, there was always someone behind me in the nightmare, and I was always trying to run from them, but I couldn't. You're trying to run fast in that dream, but you can't move like you're trying to move. But there was always someone behind me. And I ask people now when they talk to me, and I've done dream interpretation for people and different things, and I never thought to turn around in my dream. Even back then in elementary school, I never thought to turn around and face what was behind me. I'm always trying to run away from it. But I think then I was being contacted, or it could have moved along faster, but at the same time, I think there's also perfect timing.
Oh yeah, there so is, and I think so many people can relate to what you're saying, Benny. Honestly, they can do. I can, and when the voice started to come through, in the sense from automatic writing to, the physical talking, when did that start then?
You know what? I'm not sure exactly. I know I was listening to Abraham come through, the person that they come through now. They were coming through before. I listened to a lot of it. After The Secret came out, I listened, I went to sleep with it. I woke up with it. When I'm riding in the car, I was listening to it, and it just resonated with me tremendously. I've listened to a lot of other ones, but Abraham has been the main one that I've taken a lot of material from. And I don't know if we just connected like that, because I don't think that it was Abraham before, because I could feel the vibration of the presence when it kind of felt like the presence would lay on me. And sometimes the feeling would be always different. Sometimes it would be like a real heavy vibration, and sometimes it would be like a light vibration. So back then, I don't think it was Abraham back then. But when I started doing the writings, even before I started trying to, I wonder if I can speak, and that's what I was asking myself when I started just playing with it. But when I asked them for a name, and that's what it said, Abraham, it's the same Abraham that yes. And then, over time, I can hear some of the same use of language and use of words that kind of is very similar to what you hear in the other videos.
And do you call it Abraham 2.0?
2.0, yeah.
2.0. Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think, I mean, we'll get into this later on, we'll do some channeling, but do you think that the name Abraham was something that you would be comfortable with if it had been some other name? Maybe, this is a name, and it's just a name. I'm sure they say that, right? And we get so attached to names, don't we? Right.
Right. The names, I think, are more so for us than for them.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. But because it came through as Abraham, there was something about it that helped you on your journey to believe in yourself and to sort of deepen that connection with this. Would you call it a group?
They said they're a group, and I can tell they're a group because when they come through, like I set a goal to do a challenge session every day for a year and see what happens. And so, I'm way into it now, but I can tell a difference in the part of the group that is speaking. Sometimes the feel of the tone as they're communicating is different. Sometimes the feel is a little different, but I know it's the same group.
Yeah. And what is their main message, would you say?
Their main message is uncovering your truth, the nature of source that is within all of us. That is who we are beyond the workings of the mind, beyond the contents of our mind, and also aligning ourselves with source in our frequency and our tone. That's their main thing. Because if you do that, like I said before, if you do that which we want to experience here in our physical reality, it comes easily. Because even with Abraham's teachings before, where they talked about the vortex is our energy expression. It's not a physical thing, it's our energy expression, it's our energy signature. And when you think about anything that you want to manifest in your life, or a new idea, think about how that feels. A new idea, how it feels, right? It's feeling, it's energy signature. And when you think about that, and then you think about, and you put that beside how source feels, that high frequency, not all coming from the same place, but the center is a real high frequency. And if you're trying to play and practice and cultivate that high frequency of source, where you're also simultaneously talking about the birthing signature of your desires and your ideas. For somebody that wants a new car, man, I'd love to have that new car. I can, I'm gonna do everything they say to do. I can smell what that smells like. I can hear the engine. I can feel how smooth it rides. If you do that and you feel how that feels, now put that beside how source feels, as in the highest frequency that you can imagine. It's almost the same thing. When you talk about just the energy signature, just the frequency itself, not the manifestation you want, but just the frequency itself, right? It's like a high, like an exhilaration type of thing. And so that's their main message. Align with source. Recognize and begin to play with who you are as source and not who you are as a human being. And then align with source in your frequencies and your tones that you're emitting, that you're expressing. And then when you insert the car or the house or the relationship where you're already in the feeling place.
That's so true. And sometimes when you've got into that feeling place, what you really thought you wanted was not what you wanted, right? And which is the best for you in some strange, weird about way, well, it's not so strange, comes along. And we can...
And you just said it.
Yeah.
And you just said it. A lot of times, sometimes we say we want X, but the universe / our higher self / our soul and all of that, it knows what's best. So if you let that, you say, okay, I want a new car, but at the same time, you're specific, but not so specific. And say the best thing. If you say the best thing for me, a lot of times you'd be surprised when it shows up. And it shows up faster because the more narrow you get with what you want, the more you're shutting off possibility. And that's something that I'm working on now.
Oh, it's an ongoing work in practice, right? Even though you've got this ability and you're open to it, and you've helped a lot of people. I know that there's testimonies on your website. Just very briefly as well, what is your website?
Well, you can go to, first of all, I'm into the training part. I want people to, as fast as they can, get the understanding, play with it, practice it so they can have the experience of it. Because that's what really catapults you down. The faster you can create the experiences and the understanding for yourself, that's what really catapults you. So the first thing I have is I asked Abraham to produce a short training. It's called I Am the Discourse. And so if you go to iamthediscourse.com, there's a free training there and the cheat sheet that you can get that really, it's almost foundation. What they're talking about is the foundation of who and what we are. And that's really what you get is they talk about who you are, what you're capable of, how to begin becoming aware of the fact that you have a creative process that's always at work inside of you. They talk about why we don't know it already and the fact that we're the key. So anyone can go there and get that free training and get the cheat sheet to go along with it. And like you said, also have Abraham one-on-one.com, where you can go to for a one-on-one session, but there's a short presentation there. And also, like you said, those testimonials there that give you an idea of the experience that you will have in that one-on-one session. And I continue to be blown away when I have one-on-ones with people, because Abraham, they really cut through the fat. They cut through all the stuff to the things that if you understand and put it into play, it really catapults you down the road.
Absolutely. And we're linking all that in the description below as well. There are so many videos that you've done on your YouTube channel. I recommend people also check that out as well. You've got a Facebook page. I was blown away by the amount of content that you've made already. Who was watching or what the outcome was of putting those videos out, right? You kept going. and hats off to you for that. And when I saw that you'd contacted us, and I had a quick look at some of your content, I just felt the need to connect with you because this is meant to be. I felt, do you know what I mean? That you know, if I can give you this, help you with your audience as well, I think you've got a really important message to give, and everything happens at the right time, and this was just the right time for you.
Yeah, I think so. Listening to the other channelers in the docu-series has helped me a lot. I think I mentioned that to you. You know, sometimes you can feel like you're by yourself on this journey, but you're not, you know. But hearing their stories and how they are somewhat similar to mine, you know, really, really helped me. So I really appreciate you actually getting out there and doing these interviews, because it's been really powerful. And I'm sure for other channels as well to hear other people's stories.
Absolutely, and I appreciate the donation you gave us as well. I do, and I just know there's so much to your work, right? And I'm sure there's other interviews that we're going to do, or I'm sure there's some, you know, we're going to cross paths, because there's only so much we can get out in an interview, and I've just got a feeling that this is important, and it's good to feel that way actually when doing an interview. I mean, I enjoy all my interviews when it's in this subject, but there's something about what you're doing which. Well, this is just. Do you feel that you're in the beginning part of it still, even though you've been doing it for so long?
I do feel like it. I feel like I'm at the place now where I'm confident in what I am doing and how I can help people, that I can get in front of and do it, you know, whenever, wherever, around the world. And I feel like that's what I'm supposed to be doing, actually.
I want to ask you as well, right? How has your wife taken this transformation as well? Because, I mean, when we marry, right, we're aware, well, hopefully we're aware, right, that as we get older, we're going to all go through changes, right? None of us are going to be the same. And
Right.
what has this change been like for your marriage? And where does your wife stand as well? Are you both still practicing the same religion, or have you both sort of gone on your own separate paths on that?
Well, she accepts it. That's the first. She accepts it. She is interested. Of course, you know, I'm way more into it than anybody else. And I'm not pushing it on anybody, you know. My kids are not like, my kids will fight me on it. They'll fight me on it because, and I mentioned this to you also, you know, I can, with my mom passing in 2020, and this is another side to it that I'm kind of having to balance, or either just say, okay, this is what I'm going to focus on. My mom passed in 2020 due to cancer. When she passed away, I was able to communicate with her. And while my sisters and my dad were they were at the bed, you know, feeling the way we feel when a loved one passes away, I was sitting at the back of the room writing in a journal, communicating with mom. And I have another Facebook page, and I developed this whole thing, and now I'm like, you know, it kind of feels weird that I'm having to feel like I'm deciding between the two, but I called it Reconnecting in Love, where I communicate with people who are just transitioned, and because I've been doing it with my mom, and that's been interesting as well. And they kind of give the same message, but that. Like I said,
I was just going to butt in here. Sorry about this. I just want to say this. I know that was you were able to verify certain things as well. You know, that some of your family members were doing at the time when the passing took place, and it was true. You know, what Mum was telling you was true.
And you know what? One of the biggest things that my mom told me, Kevin, and I can't remember all of the before that, but something that she said when I was communicating, she said that I had been right all along, because I talked to my mom and my dad about having the out of body experience and that type of thing. And of course, you know, I was trying, my dad tried to redirect me back to the Bible and those things, but haven't seen it anywhere about out of body experience. So I was kind of, I'm kind of past that now, you know, and I'm sure they had conversations, after I was gone, after I left and everything. But she said that to me. She said that I was right all along. And so, I carry that. I carry that my mom, in her position now, she being able to communicate with her, and she is not solidifying, but she is, communicating the fact that what I'm doing and what I understand is correct.
Yeah, and that's really important as well. And I'm very sorry to hear that. I know we've all got to go through this, right? We all do, right? There's no one that's immune from that. And I guess, she's not suffering anymore. That's a great thing. But, that doesn't make up for, obviously, the loss, does it? But I think, I think I said this to you when we had a quick chat as well, that you've almost got like a new relationship on your terms with her now as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that must be a different type of experience.
It is because I know it's her, because, someone like a mom or a dad, you have that connection. You've had that connection for many years. And so when that presence or that energy, I know it's mom. When we're out, when I go home to where my dad lives, I can feel when she's there. And like my wife will be with me and I'll just say, "Hey, Mom," because I know she's there. And when we're in our house, sometimes I'll, "Hey, Mom," because I can feel her. I can feel her presence. And if I sit still, she can talk to me. One day we were in the kitchen and my youngest son, he used to play the piano with my mom. And we didn't know how much that they played. Like when they went to spend the night, we didn't know how much. And so he had the keyboard on the table and I was sitting beside him. And I said, "Mom is in here." And I could actually perceive her, not see her, but perceive her leaning over my shoulder. And she wanted me to communicate to Rias how proud she was of him, how excited that he was still playing the piano. And we asked him, like, how much did y'all practice together? But she was excited. And I was able to communicate that to him, and it.
Interesting. So interesting. So basically, when you opened up to this and you sort of just flowed with it, you were opening up your psychic side, I suppose, as well. We want to use a word, right? And as I'm guessing, that's only sort of grown as well as time goes on.
It's grown, and you hear a lot of things about possibility in the positive and the negative. And I asked Abraham about that, and they talk about frequency and tone again. Everything has to do with the vibration that you're in. If you're in a high vibration, you're going to come, like, with the law of attraction, with like attracting like. If you're in a high vibration, that's what you're going to come in contact with. So if you're practicing to be in a high, or you get yourself in a high vibration, a high frequency state before you relax down to connect, then that's what you're going to connect with. But if you're in a low frequency state, that's what you're going to connect with. But we're in control of it. We're in control of it, because no matter what's going on in spirit with different entities and species and planes of existence, we're still source. And we dictate the frequency that we're playing the game on.
That's deep, man. That is so deep. That is what you're saying there, and I so agree. And I mentioned this to you off air a little bit as well with discernment. Do you discern what comes through? Also, I kind of wanted to ask you from the last question. Well, sorry, the last answer you gave there was, what is your practice to sort of get into that heightened state? I don't know if you want to answer both there or.
That's kind of just been, based on my understanding and what's been coming through me with Abraham is just, that's at the core of it. Trying to play and practice in a higher frequency, higher tone. And again, it's a training of the body. You're training your body, because every cell, every particle has intelligence. So you're training your body to these frequencies and to these tones. And one of the things that came through one time was talking about exhilaration. And this came to me. We were at the fair, and we got on the pirate boat deal that kind of goes up, and when it drops, it's like when you're going down. And I was like, wait a minute, wow, that feels like exhilaration over here when you're talking about the excitement of an idea, or the success of a client or something. That's kind of what it kind of feels the same thing, because we compartmentalize. This is excitement, this is exhilaration. You're at the fair, this is, you want this car, but the frequencies are the same. They're very similar. And so I asked them about that, and they were like, no, it's the same frequency. You're talking about getting closer to source. And said, but the thing about it is, nobody walks around in exhilaration, but you could. And if you did, what would your life experience be coded in the vibration of exhilaration? What would be different? But it's not normal. You have to train yourself up to that. But even as you're training yourself up to that, the feeling good, everything around you changes, because it has to match. It has to match the feeling.
Yeah, and I suppose we're all here for different purposes, and I've always said this in interviews. You probably hear me say it a lot of times. Our purpose can change, or we can have multiple purposes, can't we? It's not just one.
Yeah. You can have multiple purposes, but I have seen that, and even with talking to people, there's a main something that's there that is kind of always trying to come through, and most people can feel it. And I have been around a lot of older people who have muffled it and haven't allowed it to come through, and it's always there. And it's kind of a source, after a while, it turns into a source of pain, because on the inside, that there's something that you was always trying to be birthed through you, but you never was able to do it. You've always been swallowing it, and it never goes away. It never goes away. And I hear older people talk, just listening, and I can hear that which they were inspired to do, but they never did.
So was that their experience? Was that meant to be their experience?
It's still experience. The path that they went down, the path of not allowing themselves to follow their inspiration, is still experience. It's still experience.
Yeah, and for some people, and I feel this for myself a little bit, only because I'm 43 now, but I think there's a timing involved as well. Mm-hmm. You can feel it in the background that you're destined for something that, whatever this energy is that's pulling you, right? I don't want to put I'm not here to put myself on a pedestal at all, but there's something you feel greater than what you've done right now. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say, right? Yeah. But it's just, you've got to get to A, B, C before you can actually you're even ready for it.
And it doesn't end. I was talking to someone the other day that as you climb, if you want to use a height analogy, as you climb, the higher you go, you see the next peak. You don't climb to the top and it's the end of it. The higher you go, you see the next peak. And then most likely you're inspired to go to the next one. And I think that's what it's about. But when you move back to the beginning and understanding who you are in source, who you are behind the insecurities and the fears of the mind, and you try to start living from that space, expressing yourself from that space, you climb those mountains a lot faster, because when you ask yourself the question, who am I without the fear? Right? How much faster can I move on that which I'm inspired to be, do, and have without the fear? Because when we talk about fear, we're talking about ideas and things that we have been programmed to from the human mind, and not who we are in source. Right. So that's the path that I have been on, like I said, that question of what control and power do I have over my life? And I've learned that we can reprogram ourselves. And that's where we have a lot of power that a lot of people don't realize. I mean, it seems like a lot of people are teaching it and a lot of people are working on it because that's what I'm looking for. But most people don't understand that you can reprogram yourself. You can reprogram yourself.
Yeah. And I see a lot of great business coaches out there online. There are really good ones. I mean, we've all got our faults, right? But I see some of these people, and I'm like, oh my God, man, that guy's channeling this information. He doesn't even know he's bringing it through his higher self.
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that again and again. Because I guess you didn't have to go down this road to do the wonderful work you're doing, but this was your way for it to make sense. Well, this was your calling, wasn't it, I suppose? But you could also say, if I don't combine the consciousness side of it with the practical side, in a sense, this is the way it's really been most powerful for me to help other people to do that for you. But it's, different people, different journeys. But I mean, I think it's just fascinating, the way that you've the way that you present your information and that you're channeling it, and you recognize that as well. And I watched you channel as well. You're very. It seems to be very quick for you. Well, what is your process of channeling then? How does it work for you? How do you connect?
They're here right now. I don't really. Yeah, and like I said, watching the interviews and seeing the different things that people do to prepare and to connect, and sometimes they're in control, and sometimes that which they channel just comes through when it wants to. It's coming from this side. I can say that it's coming from this side, but they're always there. They're just there, and I can perceive when they're communicating, and sometimes I like to think that they can see what's going on, and that it's not the best time for me to communicate, but maybe they don't. I'm not sure, because sometimes they'll start, and I'm like, I'm not in the space or the place to be able to do this right now, But it's like they're always right here. And if I ask, I can tell when they're there and they're trying to communicate. And anytime I ask, they're there.
And I'm sure they want to come through, and I do want to speak, because I'm enjoying this conversation, and I mean, really, I don't think there's much difference between you channeling in some respects and us having this conversation, because, as you say, they're there already. But I guess your mind's in a little bit more of a quieter state when doing that.
Yes.
How would you summarize channeling? What if I said to you, what is channeling? How would you summarize it?
I would say connecting with your higher self. Connecting with a more expanded version of yourself. Something like me here, I'm walking on the street in the city, but if you connect with your higher self through channeling, you're able to see. It's like seeing down from a helicopter or from an airplane. It's a different view. It's a more expansive, a more wise view, and it's a powerful assistance. And I tell you, and in the sessions where I've done for people, they always say, they have said in every one of them, you don't have to wait for Benny. They say you can do this yourself. They say, look, relax yourself, quiet yourself, and look to thoughts that are not yours. Is what they say. Look to thoughts that are not yours. They've told everybody, you don't have to come back to us through Benny.
That's so interesting that you say that, and that's one of my things that that the higher self is so powerful, and I think that is the connection to this greater part of yourself, in a sense, and that higher self is always with us, always talking to us in ways that are very subtle sometimes, but but it's there, and sometimes we listen, sometimes we don't. Mostly don't, right? But what I mean, I suppose you could use the higher self as the soul. Can you? Would you combine them together, or would you say they're separate?
I would say they're together. And as you were saying that, and of course, from where I started from, we have there's so many names for the same thing all around the world. And when you were talking about it being with us all the time and trying to communicate with us, what came to my mind was the Holy Spirit with Christianity. It's the same thing. It's always there. The more you are able to tune to it, the more you can hear it and the more benefit you can reap from it. But there's so many names out there all around the world for the exact same thing, but we don't realize it because we've been programmed to think separation. We've been programmed to think this is right, my way is right, and there's something wrong with that way over there, when really they're all talking about the same thing and trying to help you get to the same place,
Absolutely. I mean, you've got some great quotes on your social media. This isn't so much of a quote, but I'm going to quote it. This is very simple. You are more than you believe yourself to be.
Yeah. That is, it says a whole lot. If you read that and then if you just ask yourself, what does that mean? You open yourself up to incredible possibility. And it doesn't have to be world changing, just for you in your life. I'm more than I believe myself to be. Well, what does that mean? And again, it takes you back to, okay, my fears, my insecurities, the things that I'm worried about. Who am I without that stuff? Who would I be without that?
But we are, a lot of us, going through major challenges right now in these times, right? Mankind always has been. But for some people, days can be very difficult. Days can be very difficult. That someone may have gone through something, even today, watching this, a really trying day, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter what it is, and but it's just something difficult, right? And they may be watching this and thinking, well, how can my soul know best? How can this be for the best of me? I've just lost so much money, for example, or someone that I care so dearly about is so ill right now. It's very difficult. It's easy to see in the good of times, my soul wants the best for me. That my soul knows what's the best for me. But in the darker, more difficult times, which we all have to experience, how would you what would be your answer to that?
Instead of making comments, ask the question. What is in this for me? What is in this for me? Because everything that comes into our experience, even though it seems like it's a normal human experience, like losing a loved one, everything that comes into our experience has jewels for us as an individual. Now, what I might get from it may be different from what you get, Kevin, but if we ask the question, there's empowerment in every circumstance, in everyone. And even with my traumas and things that I grew up with and had as a child, and the anger and things that I've had to resolve within myself and let go. Things happen, you want to blame other people, you want other people to hurt as you've hurt or as they've made you hurt. But again, as you begin to play in the higher frequencies and the higher tones, then you try to look at things through source's eyes and you ask those questions. Okay, well, if this is not something that moves source off center, if it's just experience through source's eyes, then what is in this for me? How can I grow from this? And how do I make sure that I am not carrying anything that causes me to unconsciously resonate low vibration?
And we've got to be ready to be wanting to come from that space. We've got to be willing to want to come from that space.
Yeah.
And give ourselves the opportunity to see it from that perspective. That's not always easy for people, is it?
No, it's a practice. It is a practice. I will be the first one to tell you, but it grows. It grows. And as you go down that road, I want to say the stronger you become. And this is just, I mean, this is from my background, from having felt powerless and like a victim for so long. The stronger you get. And Abraham has said, don't shy away from saying powerful, because you can be a powerful individual in the higher frequencies and the higher tones, and you're not hurting anybody being the strongest version of yourself. If you're in the highest frequency and the highest tone, and then you're expressing those as you be who you really are, who you're capable of being.
I mean, everything you're saying is so empowering. It's allowing yourself the space to get to gift yourself the experience of.
Yeah, because I wasn't able to.
Right.
I wasn't able to, and you know, being here. I mean, I had some anxiety. I have to speak with Kevin, and I watched all the interviews, but I'm comfortable, and it's because of the things that I have been doing. It's because of the practices I've been doing.
Benny, this is your time. Don't ever forget that. You've built everything. You've worked so hard to get to this point, right? You more than deserve this and more, as you say in your work. Do you know what I mean? You're entitled to it. As one of your books says, I've got in front of me. I mean, I was looking forward to this as well. I mean, we've had to, reschedule a little bit because things going on in my life, which I'll talk about at some point. But I just see when I first came across you, I thought, oh well, this is more for personal self growth. Abraham is all is kind of, well, Abraham through Esther Hicks is about. Let me say this: I haven't studied Esther Hicks too much. I can't believe I'm saying that, right? But I've always listened in the times when I've needed to and found it very useful, right? But I've always found it sort of in the genre of the best you can be, kind of business, personal manifestation, basically, into things that we want to experience, the life that we want to experience. But when I look at, now I'm going to just correct me here, I look at your books and there's around 13, is there, that you've published so far?
I think something like that.
13 books, right? I think around since 2013 onwards, right? And I see all sorts of subjects that you deal with. It isn't just the business. I know the business is dear to your heart, and I totally get that, right? But you've done books, even on relationships, and I believe most of this is channeled, health, finances, of course, the God side of it as well.
That one was a top mistakes you make series. There's 5 books in that series, and the title of it is The Top Mistakes We Make. And there's relationships, health, finances, and then the last 2 are the top things you would know if you were God, and the top mistakes you make being a human being. And they're very powerful. I have to read them again and again myself.
I know. There's a lot to your work. Absolutely. I mean, it would take me a while to read some of these, but the point I'm trying to make is that your work is really diverse. Actually, you cover a whole genre of subjects, which is really unique as well. I'm just going to snap a few questions at you because I'm aware of the time. Do you know what I mean? And I could just keep talking to you without doing some of the chat.
I'm good.
I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that. You talk about trusting the plan as well. One of the things you talk about. Do you think we've all got a plan that we incarnated here with, and that we either can go with it or we can deviate from it, and is that plan that big and knowing part of what you're pulled to do? Do you think in the moment?
I think so, and I have spoke with people about this, and I can look back in my own life as well. If we take a minute and we look back into our past, there are things there are things in a row that you can look at and say we're inspired. I have in my children, there are things playing out through them now at 16, 18 years old that they're not just coming, there are things that they're inspired to do that's coming through them. I have one that has a propensity toward art and creativity. I've got one that cooks, and he's in culinary school, but it's a creativity thing that he has going on. And all of us have that. If we look back, there's things in our lives that are pointing in a certain direction. And 9 times out of 10, we know what they are, but there's fear and insecurity and things there that keep us from acting on it. There's doubt and all of that stuff is in the mind. That's not your source nature. That's the nature that we've been programmed to through the mind of humanity. That's not our source nature. But when you're talking about purpose and having a plan, I do think that there's a plan in place for things for us to experience and to learn. And I also think that we are spoken to through our inspirations that try to guide us in a certain direction. The question is, are we able to act on them? For a long time, I wasn't able to act on mine. And it was a sore place. I mean, it was actually a sore place because I can feel the inner conflict between who I was being and who I felt like I was capable of being.
Yeah, and also I suppose not caring about what others would think about.
Oh, that's huge.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah. Are we going to be here all night? I think just talking about that, right? You're right. No, it's massive, isn't it? It is a big block for people.
It really is. It really is, and that's that self-value, self-worth. If you grew up in a religion, you got a lot of that. In my growing up, there was a lot of that. I told people that a Bill Gates couldn't come out of the church I was in. He couldn't, because of the teachings about money and having money and being wealthy and being rich. You're programmed out of the possibility. Unless you have a traumatic experience that moves you to the left, you're programmed out of the possibility of being wealthy or having wealth in abundance.
So then part of your work must be not forgetting the past, but letting the past go must be a big part of it. And you also talk about turning points in your life as well, and how the turning points and what causes the turning points make a big difference as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, everyone has turning points constantly happening. But Kevin, even with those happenings, whether they're subtle events, traumatic events, meeting someone that shares a concept or idea that jars you in the moment, it still comes back to the insecurities and the programming that we have as to whether you're able to act on those things. Because that initial idea, that initial response, it's high and it feels good and we know it's the right thing. But then 2, 3, 4 days, a week goes by and you're not able to act on it. That's the programming. That's the ideas that I'm carrying in my mind that's stopping.
Well, how do you get past those barriers, though? I mean, that's because that's part of your work as well, is exploding barriers.
Yes. Well, you have to learn how to be able to reprogram yourself. And there's a lot of technical stuff, and that's something that I'm working on, a program that is going to consist of all the things that I have learned over the years and being able to reprogram your mind. And it's going to be real simple. It's going to be foundational. It's going to have to do with relaxing yourself to the point where you can communicate directly to your subconscious mind. You have to get past the gatekeeper, which is there, that doesn't just let anything and everything in. That's why one of the core concepts of reprogramming your mind is repetition. Repeating things, and eventually your subconscious mind picks it up as something that you want to be, as a person that you want to be, whether you're talking about health or relationships or whatever, you have to change something about yourself, but you have to repeat it over and over. But if you're able to relax yourself down and be able to speak directly to your subconscious mind, you can move things along a lot faster. And that's what I want people to know. That's a tool that you can do. One of the most powerful things we can do for ourselves, we're going to do in private. And that is the reprogramming part. You don't do that in a seminar or in a large group. You're going to do that laying in your bed or sitting in a chair by yourself in quiet, reprogramming yourself. And then you have to communicate directly to your subconscious mind. And I want people to know how to do that.
Absolutely. And again, your website is, just to remind people for the podcast?
Well, you go to, the first thing is finding out who exactly you are foundationally. And that's where the I am, the discourse.com, go there, get that training and the cheat sheet, and then you'll be connected to me. And then everything else will kind of flow from there. I have a Facebook group that I place a training video in at the beginning of each week. And I comment on what I get from it. And then people start chiming in and communicating. And that's part of it too. You really got to keep going back to my view from source, my view from who I am as source, my view from, you got to program yourself. Like you said, it's not easy, but the more you do it, when you get in a circumstance that used to be huge for you, that idea comes up because you programmed yourself to, okay, well, what does source think about this? How do I view it from that position? And you, like I said, you become stronger. You become stronger in the everyday, viewing life and walking through life from that perspective. And you're able to see when your mind is throwing curveballs that keep you from being who you want to actually be in the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much for reminding people that as well, and myself. We'll say that. Just before we move on to the channeling, I just want to touch on one of your books as well that came out in 2020, Why Relationships Fail, and just very briefly touch upon that book as well, because I think a lot of people, we're all here to grow, and one way is through relationships, whether it's romantic or friendship, whatever it may be, right?
Mm-hmm. I'll tell you what, Kevin, I think that was the first book that I wrote, and the answers are channeled. The questions that I asked, I think I saw where people were, and I think I read that they, you go on the internet and you can find a list of questions or problems that people have. And so what I said was, okay, I'm gonna write this one. This is going to be the first one. I don't know if I knew it was going to be the first one or not, but I'm going to do this one. So I went on the internet and I found a list of questions that are challenges that people had in relationships. And so I went about trying to answer those questions. And the answers are channeled. But the biggest thing is, it really speaks to the level of responsibility that I have as an individual in that relationship. What am I expressing in the relationship? Am I being the type of person that creates relationship? Or in any moment, am I being the type of person that breaks relationship? It's difficult, but it's the highest position of responsibility that we have. And it's the most powerful place. If you can get past are you saying I'm responsible? If you can get past that and start looking at it from okay, this is wherever I go from here, this is empowered. If I look at things from this, because we're not just talking about relationship, we're talking about your business, we're talking about your health, every area that it looks like someone or something is imposing itself on you. Who am I being? If I can take responsibility for the greatest responsibility I can take, who am I being that creates what I want? That's the highest responsibility I can take. With my kids, they're doing what they do as kids, but who am I being? Am I being the type of person that is cultivating and growing my relationship with them? Or am I being the type of person that's messing up that relationship? No matter what they do, right? No matter what they do, who am I being? And that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's what the book about relationship is pointing us toward.
That is powerful as hell, right? Yeah. I didn't expect you to
And
say
it's not
that.
fun, though. It's not fun. It's difficult, but it's so empowering, though. I mean, I have learned it, and I still have things that I struggle with, and I'm working to let go. But being able to reset yourself from that perspective is powerful. And I know that as I continue to go down the road, the stronger I'll get. And I actually asked for that. I asked for the pain so that I can help other people through it. But it's been difficult. It has been difficult. My own challenges have been difficult. Yeah.
But it must be beautiful now, and as you continue to work on it as well, that, you know, when people come to you in the worst of states sometimes, that you're able to give them the power back to themselves. And
that's what it's about.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's all it's about. Because, I mean, married, husband, father, business person, it doesn't matter what circumstance you're in. It's about what I'm expressing. It's about what I'm intending, who I intend to be, and what I am trying to create. Everything else is a collaborative component in my experience wherever I show up. And the only thing that matters, I mean, I love everyone, but the only thing that matters is who I'm being, because that's the only thing I can control.
It's almost like a selfish, unselfish way. It's a paradox a bit. Yeah. You're putting
selfish is the word.
Yeah.
And that's that highest frequency thing again. Selfishness, but in the highest frequency and in the highest tone. What does that look like for me as an individual? All right. If I'm choosing to be as selfish as I can, focusing on what I want to create, an awesome relationship with Kevin and an excellent interview, and I'm expressing that in the highest frequency and the highest tone.
Yeah, makes sense.
Then I'm putting myself in position to have the best outcome.
Yeah, it's almost it feels a little bit like, you know, you put yourself first, you're putting others first, you put others first, you're putting yourself first. It's a circular thing. It's yeah.
But it's not what we're taught. It feels eerie at first. It feels like you're doing something wrong.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you for just expressing it that way as well. Yeah, and I'm definitely going to take a read of that book when I do get a few minutes to myself, which I'm working on. I'd like just to do a little bit of channeling, and I say a little bit because I'm obviously conscious of time right now, but I'd love just to speak to the group. Yeah.
Okay.
But I've really enjoyed speaking to you as well. Let me just say that. Yeah.
All right. And I'll tell you, as we start, it'll get deeper and easier for me. Most of the time I just have to start, and then it gets cleaner. Hey, Kevin.
It is so beautiful to be connected with you right now. I'm so glad to have this moment with you. I really am.
Yeah, we're here. This has been coming a long time.
I feel that. Do you know that? I feel that. And I really want to ask you as well, what is the connection with Benny? There's a deep connection here, isn't there?
Benny has done this before, and he kind of touched on it with the connections that were trying to be made to him when he was a child. That has kind of, edged him along this path. But he's done this before. And with the out-of-body experience, that really opened him up to the connection. It opened him up to greater possibility. And it opened him up to the focus and actually looking at himself as the center core power point of his life, which in turn is the same for your life. You're the center, you're the core, you're the power point. There is nothing else but you. Everything else comes into your experience because of you.
That's very interesting. So the more that you align yourself with your inner being, your soul, your higher self, these are just words I'm using, of course, then the more that you're on your path, the more that you're living in purpose, in a sense, by trusting that inner being.
The more your path will be revealed. Because the more you align yourself with your inner being, the freer you become, the stronger you become, the quicker you're able to act on that which you are inspired to be. And you're inspired to be that which is in alignment with what you truly desire.
Right, okay. So to change your reality then, you've got to address a few things. What are some of those things that we need to address, do you think, if we want to change our dominant reality? If we feel that
you have
pull?
to address the fear that's being perpetuated by the mind of humanity. There's so many falsities. There's so many misunderstandings. There's so many mistaken identities. This is what needs to be addressed, and that's one of the core tenets of what we are trying to communicate through Benny, that if you understand who you really are in source, if you really understand that, and you realize that all of these ideas that circle in your mind and the belief systems that have been given to you and that you have acquired over your lifetime that are not serving you, that are not allowing you to be fully expressed, when you realize that they're not you, not the true you, the game completely changes.
Yes, in so many ways. Yeah. Getting to that point though, isn't it? So in a sense, and I'm sort of moving on here a little bit, right? But, and you would say this as well, probably, but when you put your attention on something, when you focus on an idea, for example, then, as you've probably said before, this is what creates the form, the physical, in a sense.
Yes. Your attention and your focus is what begins the movement of the energies. Out of the energies come the particles, your protons, your neutrons, your electrons that lie dormant. When you place your attention and your focus on an idea, you move the energies. Out of those energies come the particles that eventually create the forms. The forms begin to coalesce and collaborate together to become the experience. And all of this happens immediately. In energy, this happens immediately. But because on your planet you have time and space, you have a gestation period for ideas, just as you have a gestation period for the birthing of a child. But what you have to understand as source is that your ideas exist immediately. And as you entertain and you focus on that idea and you feed it that birthing energy, it's growing in density until it reaches the density level that you're able to perceive it and all of its collaborative components with your physical senses. You understand that there is more reality beyond what your physical senses can perceive, correct? Ideas are true. Ideas exist, just as the signals, the frequencies going between your computers, going between your cell phones exist. They're things. They're just beyond the perception of your physical senses. So are your ideas. But you don't have to believe us. You don't have to believe us. You can just look to those things, most of humanity, you can look to those things that you do not desire. The reason they keep appearing, they're not continuing, they're repeating. And they're repeating because you're holding your attention and your focus on that which you do not want. Each one of you are powerful manifestors. You don't have to learn how, you're doing it now. The creative process is constantly in motion. And you are creating. Most often it's what you don't want, though, because that's where you're placing your attention and your focus. You really have to shift your mind, begin the play and practice of holding in your mind that which you want versus that which you do not want. And it will begin to manifest. And again, it's not a continuation, it's a repeating as a result of that which you're holding your attention and your focus on.
Right. And again, that which you wish to manifest, just as it could be for, well, everything changes, doesn't it? And what you're focused on now may not be what you want to focus on in the future. And that's also part of life as well, isn't it? To as Benny has said, so sort of, get to that pinnacle point and then at the top of the mountain, and then you're climbing up again and doing that which you love in a different form.
Sure, that's the human experience. The creating of experience is the core of human experience. And every experience gets logged away, whether it's what you want or what you do not want. But what we're interested in, for those who choose to begin to understand who they are in source, is that they begin to play and practice from that perspective. And in so doing, they will become even more deliberately powerful creators, followers of that which they are inspired to be, do, and have. And life begins to flow because they're able to follow that which they're already inspired to do and be, they just haven't been capable of doing it. And as they begin to live life from that perspective, releasing the fear, releasing the doubt, releasing the worry that is perpetuated by the mind of humanity, they become beacons of light to all that they come in contact with. This is what we desire.
Do you think there could be an opposite to that, where they're tuned into something which isn't such a beacon of, as we would see, a beacon of light to others, but actually could be a bit of a path of, misleading others in a sense, in some form or fashion, right? But that also is an experience, isn't it, for all those who follow, and for those who have perpetrated that following, in a sense, because they feel that this is what their purpose is, or they're almost misled in a sense. But everything happens for a reason. I'm trying to put it in the best words I can. I hope it makes sense.
We understand. We understand. And yes, everything does happen for a reason, and that reason is the frequency and the tone, the vibration that one is in. One who is not in the highest of vibrations can have a massive following. And the individuals in that following, get this, Kevin, be empowered by the teachings. From where they were 2 years ago to where they are now, they have been empowered. Going from victimhood to hopeful, whether you are inspired to move along that emotional continuum by a priest or a criminal, is empowerment. Does that make sense?
It does, and it was the only way for them to change their ways in certain ways, right?
They
And
align themselves. They align themselves with that particular teacher. They align themselves with that organization. And, Benny understands it now because for a while he stood in conflict with the religious background that he had. But those who have aligned themselves with any particular religion, if they are receiving benefit, if they are being empowered, who's to say that it's not the absolute best thing for them now, at this moment, where they are in their life experience?
yeah, isn't that a paradox? But it's so true what you're saying, because they're even in the misleading, there is a growth, and they do. Some of them become, as you say, better people, and even when they leave the misleading, or when they've gone on to do other things, that better version of themselves is leaving with it as well. It's so true what you're saying. Yeah, difficult to
Absolutely.
see it from that perspective, but it's not so difficult when you you say it like you do. So yeah, um, you mentioned in your thank you for that, by the way. You mentioned in your teachings as well, the most powerful thing you can do is master your frequencies. Just explain that for the audience, just very briefly.
Your frequencies and your tones. This is, in that understanding, we're talking about your energy signature. Each individual has an energy signature. It is a mix. Is a mix of frequencies and tones currently based on your programming, your belief systems, your belief in wealth and abundance or lack and scarcity. Whichever one it is has a frequency and has a tone. Your belief in broken relationships or beautiful relationships carries a frequency, carries a tone. Each human being is made up of numbers of belief systems, and they have numbers of thought processes as a result of those belief systems that are constantly fluctuating and moving in their mind and creating movement of emotion within the body, thus resulting in their energy signature. One who becomes conscious that they are source, one who becomes aware that there is a law. You can say the law of attraction. Many came to say the law of reflection, because in truth, that which you are expressing as your energy signature is what is reflected back to you in the mirror of your life experience. So if you begin to play and practice of mastering your frequency, mastering your tone, which all we mean is playing in the highest. Keep it high. Go toward excitement and beyond. And try to hold it as long as you can. Program yourself to walk around in those high tones. And watch what happens to your life experience. Not at some future moment, right now in the present moment. When you're standing in line getting ready to check out. Place yourself in excitement as you approach the cashier and see what type of exchange you have. In the present moment. It has an immediate effect. And the more you can play and practice in higher frequencies, higher tones, moving through joy, into excitement, into exhilaration and beyond, your life experience reflects it by law. And notice we're not talking about any particular manifestation. We're talking about playing in the higher frequencies and tones because that's who you are.
Yeah. So anything in your life that's that we use the word manifested, it's all matched to the to what you're emitting. It's all matched
Yes.
to the frequency that you're emitting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So change the frequency, see that greatest version of yourself in the moment
Hmm.
that you're trying to, whatever it is that you envisage that you could be or do. And
Hmm.
it's amazing what doors will open, isn't it? If you truly believe,
Yes.
yeah, truly believe
Think
it.
about that. And anybody listening, think about that. The highest version of yourself in whatever area you want to insert that idea, the highest version of yourself, even if you don't know what that looks like, feel it. Feel what it feels like. In Benny's business book, he talks about the strategy of brilliance. It's not just for business, it's for life. Think about being brilliant as a husband, brilliant as a parent, brilliant as a friend, as a son. Brilliant. How does that feel? And when you talk about the idea of being brilliant and you're expressing the feeling, even again, if you don't know what it looks like, but if you express that feeling, there's ideas associated with that feeling. There's belief systems that are associated with that feeling that you begin to come in contact with. Because if you begin to play in the idea of brilliance in the area of relationship, for example, there's a different version of you than the version of you that is in relationship right now. For most people, the version of you that exists in relationship right now fluctuates between being frustrated and being upset and being conditional with your love and having expectations on whether you're going to express love. But brilliance has to do with expression. Brilliance has to do with who you intend to be in the relationship that creates the relationship as you would like it to be. It has nothing to do with your partner. Zero. And that's where the level of responsibility goes up. And it's difficult for people. But as you begin to play that game, you begin to see how much more powerful you are in the creating of the experience by letting go of the expectation of that which is already manifest, because physically manifested reality has no inherent creative power. The creative power is within you, the individual.
Well, you could turn that around to relationships, couldn't you? Yes, you can imagine and feel the energy of the desired person that you would love to meet, but to let go of the results, right? This could apply to everything, right? But I'm using relationships. It's as you would say, the jewel is in the journey.
Yep. It is in the journey. It's in the journey of becoming. The journey is the becoming. With each new idea, the individual has to become the idea. So as you climb one peak in relationship or in your health or in business, and you're able to start seeing that next peak in the distance, it requires you to become more. It requires you to become not more, but different. Does that make sense?
It does. No, thank you so much for this. And we're almost at the end here of time, but thank you so much for everything you shared. What is, I mean, obviously Benny mentioned fear as being a large resistance in anyone's life, but is there, in the resistance that we all hold to getting what we desire, or at least getting to that which is best for us, right? What are one of the principles that we can apply, or one of the something that we can use to get rid of the resistance? Maybe not get rid of it, but transform it. Maybe that's a better word.
We would say acceptance. The mistake is made when the idea of something that is not wanted is present to fight against it. And then you're fighting against anything, you're creating it because you're placing that material into the creative process within. There's no separating, there's no escaping that. But in your acceptance of that which you have been, and in your acceptance of that which you have created, you're no longer fighting it. You're saying, hey, we're here. I've created this. I understand how and why I've created it. How do I move past it? How do I begin to create that which I intend to create, what I truly desire to experience, what I want versus what I do not want? And as you begin to entertain that idea in acceptance, which is really close to love without condition, in acceptance, you begin to open yourself up to the ideas that will eventually become a new belief system that allows you to move into the idea, into the experience. That's the becoming.
Yeah, and that may look like a loss sometimes, like I've had to lose something to get there. But
you're talking about the experience shifting and transforming.
Yeah, well,
it's not really a loss, but you're talking about the experience transforming.
Yes.
There will always be pieces that
it may
that
look
no
like a
longer
loss.
fit.
Yeah, it may look like a loss. Like, for example, right? Okay, here's an example. I know we're going over time, but here's an example, right? So, okay, someone's getting near retirement age, and they lose their money, all their savings, and obviously devastation takes place. And how are they gonna get back to where they were? My life is over, kind of thing. But actually, maybe something like that had to happen for you to move on to what you're really meant to be doing, or something's supposed to dissolve for something new to show. I don't know if I'm making sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, we understand. But at the core, we're still talking about the fact that they were expressing an idea. In parts of what you just communicated, that individual was expressing lack and scarcity, because losing that which you have created, or that which you had created disappearing from your experience, is a result of ideas, belief systems, attention, and focus. It was there, and then it wasn't there. Experience is constantly being created. It's constantly being reflected as a result of attention, focus, the energies that are being expressed, because you can find contradictions to that idea all around you. Individuals get older, their wealth continues to amass, even though they're not actively engaged in any activity, seemingly, to create it. We're talking about ideas, we're talking about belief systems where a creator, source energy, a pure, perfect piece and parcel of source energy is creating experience.
And it's the trust, isn't it? It's the trust of having the faith that you're going to be looked after. There's something better coming along, or everything's going to be okay. And it's the trust in that as well, isn't it? Of trusting life to take you on the journey as well.
Trust is a piece. Trust, and we would say / letting go, is a piece that you come to as you entertain and grow in the idea of the sourceness that you are. As you develop and grow in that idea, and you come to understand that not only that you are creating, but that you are the creator, and that there's nothing that can hinder you. There's nothing that can stop you. There's nothing that can hurt you, because you were never born and you never die. But the game is experience. You are a creator. And now that you are conscious, the most powerful way to play the game is to play in the highest of frequencies, the highest of tones, and to focus on that which you intend, as opposed to that which you do not want. At the foundation, the practice is very simple, but you have to overcome the programming. That which you have been programmed, how you've been programmed to live, how you've been programmed to think. That's the challenge. That's the only challenge. But you are a creator, and you are creating right now, each and every one. There's no escaping it.
No, there's not. And it's got a funny way of knocking at the door sometimes in many, many different ways when you do try to sort of push against it for that which you should be doing. Life has a gentle and sometimes not so gentle way of showing its face, or your higher self coming through in different ways sometimes as well. So I want to leave it on that beautiful note that you left it on there. I want to thank you for bringing Benny to this audience as well, and giving him the strength to do this today as well. And I hope our paths cross again, and I just appreciate you coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us. This has been amazing. And we are excited for each one of you who are listening to this transmission. It is all that we desire, that each one of you know exactly who and what you are, and begin to live from that place and watch how your life unfolds. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, there you go, Benny. That was fantastic. And we, just touched the surface on a lot of that stuff as well.
Yeah.
But there's some really interesting gems in that session as well. It's just all so important, and especially with the times that we live in right now, coming from this space is important for people.
It really looks like there's so many things happening to us that are beyond our control, but that's not the truth. That's not the truth. The truth is that no matter what's happening in the world, if you live and exist from that space of understanding who and what you really are, you can walk through life as you and see and create as you intend for it to be. Now imagine everybody doing that.
Right. It would change the world, wouldn't it?
Yeah. It would be so different.
Now, just remind us, Benny, one last time of your website. It is?
I would say go to iamthediscourse.com. There is a free training there and the cheat sheet to go with it. And there you would connect with me, and you will find out in the other ways that we are working to understand and know and experience who we are in source, and how to really accelerate our ability to create the experiences that we desire in our life. The Facebook group is You Are Source, You Are Creating. If you put that in Facebook in the search, it'll come up, and I mean, you don't have to go through the other channels. You can go directly to the Facebook group, be connected, and really jump in. There's training videos there where you can start commenting and really start positioning yourself from the highest perspective, the most empowering perspective.
Well, I knew I was going to enjoy this interview, even though, we've had to postpone a few times. It was so worth it. And I really love your energy, and it's going to be interesting to see you on your journey as well, most definitely.
Yeah.
And I just wish you all the best with what you're doing, and I know our paths will cross again, so just thank you so much for coming on. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Kevin, and I'm sure that when I was listening to your interview and you were talking about your story and the International Spiritual News Network, and I felt a huge burst of energy, and I think I told my wife I'm supposed to touch base with him. I don't know if he's going to say anything or not. He's all of these interviews in different channels, and it's just me, but I felt like there was something there. And like I said, and when I emailed you, I don't know what it's going to look like down the road. I don't know how we're going to do things down the road, but I feel like you said, there's something there. I don't know what it is, and I don't know if you know what it is, but there's something.
It's funny you say that. I wanted to say the International Spiritual News Network in this interview and working with you with that, and you've mentioned it at the very end. I wasn't going to mention it because I wanted it to be about you, but it is about you, and we're mentioning that really. Yes, I say yes.
Yeah.
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 So
So I'm looking forward to that, whatever it looks like. I think that's going to be so powerful. And I thought, looking at all the different channels that you have interviewed and all the ones out there and the many followers, you just look at YouTube and all of the views from channelers and people talking about, metaphysics and law of attraction. There's so many people around the world in every country that are that's open to this understanding. And when you talk about a news network that is offering that level of spiritual perspective on the events that mainstream media is communicating, that level of perspective for those people who are open to it, that's going to be powerful, because it's going to help people to have their mind in the right position based to look at what's happening in the world.
Thank you for that. No, I really appreciate what you're saying there. I appreciate the final words you're saying there. That means a lot. It really does. And yeah, I do want you to be part of that, actually. And I wanted to say that in this interview. So you've brought it up and you've read my mind, right? Most definitely. And I see the same for you as well. I do. Be prepared to be surprised.
Hey, I'm ready.
I don't need to say you are. I don't need to say that. I just know where this can go, and you are ready. You are ready, and that's why you're here. So just thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, Kevin.